Trump came out and said a bunch of stuff about Zelensky. This is him responding to the fact that Zelensky was mad that he wasn't invited to peace talks for his own nation. Which is, I think, a fair stance, given that, you know, Ukrainian people fought and died in the war. They would have some input into the peace talks.
3 years. You should have never started it. You could have made a deal.
Saying you should never have started it to some country that got invaded is crazy. That's crazy. Ukraine did not start it.
I could have made a deal for Ukraine that would have given them almost all of the land. Everything, almost all of the land, and no people would have been killed, and no city would have been demolished, and not one dome would have been knocked down.
Almost all the land is a funny thing to say. Anyway, I just saw a lot of people who I know who are like, I mean, this guy's a Trump supporter, but he was like, I was very wrong about Trump and Ukraine. You know who I even saw? I was did my morning watch of Hassan Mingold. And I saw Asmongold being like, I hate this. Asmongold was like, dude, his title is like Trump Golden Era. And he's like, I hate this. I don't know many people who are like, I don't see the benefit. Now he's putting these posts out where he's like openly roasting Zelensky, which is like exactly, I mean, yeah, and then he said some shit like Zelensky's possibly a dictator. He should run an election. And it's like, Putin has been in power since before most of my chat was born. The year 2000. Putin's been running shit. Even when he had the puppet Medvedev, I don't know if I'm saying his name 100% correctly. This guy fell asleep during a Putin speech. And the press caught it and it became kind of a big thing and he kind of got pushed out. He was like embarrassing. But yeah, it's during a war. You can't be asking him to hold the election during a war. Half the people are dead. The cities are bombed. It's insane. They're going to have a normal free and fair election during wartime where they're being invaded. So I don't know. I'm super unimpressed with this. And I think let's follow the chain of thought here. I want to get used to go a little deeper on this. There was a really brilliant investment thesis actually from one of the Marketing Monday researchers, Dom, which I'll tell you about now because it's already paid off. Okay, so NATO. Joe Biden was really into NATO. Didn't really play well in the election, but you know, this idea of this treaty of European nations in America, where America had like the key military leadership and sort of provided the security blanket for Europe and then used that to gain, I don't know, soft power and influence over Europe. That's like the benefit to America of NATO. But obviously, America put more money in than everyone else. Trump sees that, and for a variety of reasons, I think he just doesn't like the leaders in Europe. They don't like him either, and there's like a begrudging feeling there. So, and he wants to just cut this spending, is demanding that, you know, EU spend more money, put more money into NATO, put more money into their own defense, spend more money in their military. America wants to cut back. Okay, the short term, USA saves money, but medium to long term, it diminishes their leadership capability over NATO, which means they don't get to dictate what happens with the EU military, what they do. They don't get to like sort of set the tone there. And what's happening now, the follow-on second order effects are that EU is now running their own combat drills. So this happened 14 hours ago. I mean, as this US stance on Europe shifts under Trump, NATO's holding its own combat drills. Second order effect of that is that EU nations like France and Germany are realizing that they need to start spending more money on their own military and sort of build their own military capability. But whereas previously under NATO, they would be spending it at American defense companies, they are now discussing spending it on European defense companies. Why do they want to go to Lockheed Martin? Why do they want to go to Raytheon? Why are they going to take all of their money and send it to American companies to build the weapons and tanks? So you'll notice German defense companies like Rheinmetall, which again, Dom invested in, are now skyrocketing. They're now shooting up because at the same time as, you know, Germany's auto industry is suffering, they're losing auto industry jobs to China. They need to find a way to employ all these people. And so Europe is doing to build up their own defense industry. So now we're getting a remilitarized Germany with their own defense companies. If you look at largest defense contractors by market cap, the ones that are all green, look, France, Germany, France, UK. We're seeing massive spikes in all the European defense companies because all the European countries are going to spend less on the American ones and more on the European ones as they try to build up. Again, these are like these knock-on effects that I don't think are thought about. I guess the real takeaway that I have from reading all this news and keeping up with this administration is that they don't care. They don't care about any of the second order effects. I mean, I am confident that Trump doesn't even know who's in BRICS. And it's like this geopolitical struggle with BRICS is like the important defining story of the next 10 years. He doesn't even know who's in it. It is frustrating. I'll be honest with you. It is frustrating. I can deal with an ideological difference, but I can't wrap my head around just doing random world-changing things at all times with no concept of the consequences. People will be dealing with this for a while. Yeah, again, the Vance speech in Munich. It's just like, I just can't overstate how much America benefited from the relationship with Europe. And it's so annoying to be told by my leaders that actually they were ripping us off, and by spurning all of our allies, it's not the case. We're not benefiting from this new course of action. Can we explain that? A genuine question? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying this is overall a good thing, but as an American, it's a beneficial thing. The soft power that America had over Europe by basically being their de facto defense provider meant that when America set a policy stance, like let's say we're going to have tariffs on Chinese EVs, or we're going to provide funding for Zelensky, or we're going to do whatever, it would be done without question. I mean, Europe just kind of jumped. They would, or invade Iraq, or whatever America wanted to do around a lot of things, almost any policy. Europe would de facto kind of fall in line because of the NATO influence, because of the soft power of America over Europe. And so it gave America a lot of sway geopolitically. It also gave them kind of a card in this power struggle with China, in that at the end of the day, Europe would never tilt over to Chinese interests. But when you cut all that to save a couple bucks on NATO, and you actually actively piss them off, again, it was so funny because the money that they were spending, like the European militaries, was all going to American military companies. The whole thing was like set up to be beneficial to America. It was like the whole system was all, at the end of the day, like stacked deck for America. So it's just crazy to think like, we're getting ripped off, let's dismantle this. And they did, and they are. And now Europe, which is of course in a bad spot, don't get me wrong. Europe is really struggling to find its way now in this new world. But what they're going to do is pivot to their own self-interest, which involves trading more with China, thus semi-isolating more America, eventually probably reopening natural gas trade with Russia, building their own defense industry. So they're getting their own defense companies. It just feels, there's that memer thing going around out of China where they're like, their plan is to just sit there and watch Donald Trump dismantle the US-led world order on his own. Just do nothing and let him do it by himself. And it's like he's doing that. All of these systems were set up to like entrench America's position, and now they're being dismantled by our own president. I don't know. It's crazy. It's like not a good strategy. And I just have to say it. Like there's no other way to take it, I think. And again, I read a lot of smart people, many people of them who voted Republican. And I can't find anyone among people I think are actually smart. People who really follow the markets, can see ahead of, people have been good predictors. And all of them are like just despondent about all this. Seems like a good thing for Europe, at least somewhat. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think it kind of comes at a good time for someone like Germany, who is dealing with an industrial crisis where they're having more industrial bankruptcies, industrial layoffs. They have energy problems that are making things more expensive there, and people are moving factories elsewhere. But like, if they become the defense contractor of Europe and they start rebuilding factories that build tanks and bullets and guns, it's a good way to keep jobs and keep factories open. But that historically is not great. Massively militarized Germany, but Germany records highest company insolvencies and bankruptcies. They haven't had this many bankruptcies since the Great Financial Crisis. This is this year and rising. German bankruptcies are horrendous. And then also, just massive layoffs, especially in industrial. And if you trace that back, it's because of rising energy costs. These are problems happening in Germany that appropriately. Anyway, I did want to say this not as entirely negative. I wanted to shout out Dom, our Marketing Monday researcher, one of our researchers, because he spoke to me about this thesis and it paid off insanely. Because Trump's had an anti-NATO stance forever. And when he's elected, you could have made this call to invest in a company like Rheinmetall, and Dom did, and is reaping the rewards, dude. And I saw this article too, by the way. You know who else called on it? A US politician. Yeah, well, some people in Congress bought this stock too. It's good that we have American Congress people buying German defense contractor stocks as we dismantle our spending on NATO. Dude, this is crazy. Russia praises Trump for saying NATO was a major cause of the war in Ukraine. Love that for him. At least he's getting praised. Love to see praise. Anyway, there are talks happening, just not with Zelensky involved. And I do think they'll reach some sort of agreement. It's interesting though. I saw a map, right? There was the map of the proposed agreement. And what's funny is it's a peace talk between only America and Russia. So Ukraine's not involved and Europe is not involved. And yet it requires a demilitarized zone policed by European and UK troops. So it gives Russia a lot of the land that they've taken during this invasion, which again, I mean, I said this 8 months ago. If left to their own devices, eventually Russia will win the war in Ukraine. I don't know how to say that. If without a huge surplus of new money and arms going in, I don't know. You have to figure something out. You either have to recommit more to the defense of Ukraine, or you have to give Russia some concessions. It's not great. Realpolitik being what it is, I can understand Zelensky hating it. I can see some land concessions to end the war. People are dying, okay? But volunteering all of Europe to defend the border that you drew up, they have to pay for and spend this. After all that NATO talk, it's just crazy. And they're not even being included in the peace talk. It's so insulting to the European allies. Russia isn't acting like they're about to win. Here's the thing. Russia is in a position where they will likely win with the caveat, but at what cost? In that it is causing a drastic overheating in their economy. You know, the repercussions are starting to be felt really hard in Russia. So what Putin wants most of all is a ceasefire, basically, to regroup, to get all of his shit in order, to solidify this new area, and then just go after it again later. What you have to hope for is not that. You want a lasting peace. Here's the pattern I've seen in a lot of these decisions so far, specifically in Trump 2.0, this administration, is doing things that are only good for the optics, only that are good for the social media post, only good for the news soundbite, only good for like the one. And I would like to see an end of the war in Ukraine, but I'm hopeful that they don't go with just any cost, any concession, any deal to get I got a peace in Ukraine that will then unwind in 4 years. Anyway, this was the most recent peace talk. And, you know, Zelensky, to his credit, has been trying to not crash out in all his responses. Inside the 48 hours that Trump turned on Zelensky, specifically, Zelensky better move faster. He's not going to have a country left. Blaming him for strong arming the United States into spending hundreds of billions of dollars to go to a war that couldn't be won. It's fucking insane to say that Zelensky strong-armed the U.S. Zelensky forced us into it. This is such a rewriting of history, bro. Anyway, I mean, I do hope there's peace in some way, but I'm very afraid of a false peace, a false short-term Instagram photo op peace, and not a real peace.